All right, greetings everyone, or whoever's going to watch this video. I am doing this video for the first time, doing a video for the first time, so bear with me. So this video is going to be on the hero's journey, and basically I'll be reflecting that on a couple different things. One, the ascension process that we're going through. I'm going to mention the law of one, although I'm not going to have a whole lot of law of one questions and answers in this video. I'll have to do another video to get in the law of one, and you probably hear my dogs in the background. That's just going to happen. This is going to happen. So bear with me. I'm not an expert video person. This, like I said, this is the first time that I've done anything on using, you know, the different technologies to get this video to where it needs to go so people can see it. It is a little more detailed than what I'm used to, so, or I've experienced. All right, so nonetheless, this is a video on the hero's journey and the way to ascension. I think it's really going to hit home with many people. It's something that will help you answer many questions about what is occurring in your life and in life in general. What is the purpose of life? This answers those questions, and I hope you enjoy it. All right, so we'll just go over the purpose real quick. Again, I already talked about we're going through an ascension process. The hero's journey, or understanding the hero's journey, is a key to unlocking the mystery of ascension. So what I'm doing is reflecting on the Nag Hammadi scriptures that were found in 1945. I'll discuss some others, like the Dead Sea Scrolls, although I'm not going to go over those. I haven't actually read those. I've only read one of the books. I've started on the second book in the Nag Hammadi scriptures. And so mainly this is going over the Apocryphon of James, which it means the secret book of James. And really knowing the secret book of James, it answers so many questions, you know. Yes, I grew up as a Christian. I was raised as a Christian, although I went to university, went to a Catholic school. And so I studied theology. I studied the first year of theology as part of my academic program. So I have some experience in, you know, doing theological studies and research. So I did that. And also I did a comparative study with Buddhism and Hinduism. I studied Asian philosophies and things like that. So I know a little bit about those things. And so, but this is not meant to be like a religious experience. This presentation, I'm not doing this as a religious experience. I'm showing you that Jesus had a purpose, and he came here to show us certain things. He wasn't meant to be worshiped. And so, I'm going, you know, that's probably going to ruffle some people's feathers. And I'm also going to say some things about the Catholic Church that may ruffle some people's feathers. And so just brace yourself, okay? Because this is not intended to assault anybody's religious beliefs at all, or personal beliefs. It's not meant to do that. Although it has the potential to do that. So, but anyways, I'm really going over Jesus, and that's because he was discussed in the Apocryphon of James. He was like Buddha and many others. You can say Muhammad for Islam as well. Many people have came to show us the way through the hero's journey. Many. And Jesus did a really good job of doing it. However, it's my belief that the church, the Catholic Church specifically, filtered out some specific texts, including the Apocryphon of James, to prevent you from knowing his purpose and his mission. And that it really affects how you see religion after knowing what Jesus said his purpose was. And that was removed from the text, removed from the biblical scriptures. So you end up with a distorted doctrine. I don't want to say false. It's distorted because you don't know the full truth. Okay, so the Apocryphon of James helps fill in the gap. It helps you understand what was the purpose. And really, when you look at the Bible, you'll be looking at it in a different lens. It has a different prescription. So it doesn't matter if people believe the message that this is what he says. Doesn't matter if you believe the message. It only matters if you hear the message and the hero's journey. And what he talks about, well, really, it's the knowledge, it's the parables. Really, the parables are stories that he wants the disciples and others to witness. And those stories, those events, are supposed to provide you insights that will guide you through the hero's journey, right? And we're all on the hero's journey, whether you know it or not. I'm going to show you that we're all on this hero's journey. You'll see it. All right. So when you put the pieces together, you'll have the tools for a successful ascension. You'll know what you're going to experience yourself. And really what that does is give you confidence in the process, confidence in the journey. That was the purpose. So, and the scriptures, they're meant to be used as a handbook so that you remain hopeful and faithful, and so that you can see the built-in framework that we're traveling through, that we're traveling through on this journey. And so in the Apocryphon of James, Jesus said, "Blessed will they be who will be saved through the faith of this discourse." And again, you're going to find out why that is so important. That statement really sums up what Jesus's purpose was. All right. And why he did what he did. So I'll start with that. We'll leave it at that. And so hopefully that's the hook that you need to get through the rest of this presentation. All right, so I'm going to go over the Gnostic text, which includes the Nag Hammadi and the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Holy Bible. I'm going to discuss those a little bit. All right, and then we'll go over the hero's journey. What is it? We'll look at some definitions, and then I'll pull out some verses in the Apocryphon of James, and then we'll do a summary. And I have some references for you. So if you want to go and look at these texts, they're all available online for free. You can find them in PDF versions. I even have the Bible in a PDF version free. You can do that. And I provide references so that you can do that. All right. So the Gnostic texts, they include the Nag Hammadi scriptures and the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Nag Hammadi was found in Egypt in 1945. In Upper Egypt. There's a certain region of Egypt, and it's called the Upper Egypt region. And I'm not a geography person, but that's where it was found. All right. So, and what they are, if you look at the very bottom left-hand corner there, you can see a stack of old books, and they have some old texts in them. And what they are, these books, they're called codices, or codexes, however you want to pronounce it. They include codex 1 through 8, and they contain over 50 texts, scriptures. Yeah, was that right? No, there's 50 texts that were found, 50 of these books, about 50. And there's 8 codexes in there. And I'll show you what's in the codexes here in a bit. So the scriptures are dated. Some people say as early as some, experts say as early as, 1 or 200 BC and going into 300, as late as, 2 or 300 AD. All right. And so that's pretty much the same time frame that they're dated as the Bible is. The Bible is dated to be written around the 1st and 2nd centuries, right? So the same time frame. The difference is the Gnostic texts, some experts are saying, were written before then. Okay. All right. Same thing with the Dead Sea Scrolls. Very interesting about the Dead Sea Scrolls because they were found in just a couple of years later, 1947. They're found in the Qumran caves in the region of the Dead Sea. And there were about 1,000 manuscripts that were found. 800 of them were original texts, original scriptures. The ones that were found that were duplicates were mainly the book of Isaiah, and that was put on view for public view in around 2006. And so this picture on the very bottom right, I believe it might be a facsimile or a copy, but I'm not sure if that was actually on the table, but they brought out the transcripts, the scriptures, so people could review them or see them. But they're dated. The interesting thing about the Dead Sea Scrolls, they're dated as early as 250 BC, before Christ. So that's even earlier than when the Bible was written. All right, so those things I find very interesting about the Gnostic texts. All right, they're available free. I provided the links to them in the reference. You can read them yourself. The Holy Bible. So Holy Bible is just, and I'm not an expert. I'm looking at this from some, average person eyes. I have a little bit of studying, and I question a lot of things. All right. So I question everything that is told. I question them from the experts. I'm looking at these from a naked point of view. All right. But the King James Version, or the Bible itself, is just buried in controversy. All right. It's just covered in controversy. And the reason is because, the Bible, the earliest, it was started, somebody started to write the Bible as early as around the early 300s. So like 312, they started to translate and put the scriptures in a book, roughly around that time frame, around 312. That's when the basically the Holy Bible, that's its origins, is around that time frame. All right. 90% of its translation is mainly credited to this guy, William Tyndale, in 1536. William, I think he was killed. Yeah, he was killed in 1535, but in 1536 is the year after they killed him. He was, they published his translations. So it's really interesting. But even 90% of the Holy Bible is really accredited to William Tyndale today. So he was executed for heresy, which was translating the Bible. It was illegal to do that for over 1,000 years. You could not translate the Bible. You have Pope Gregory the Ninth, I think it was. He had a public notice that his mission was to weed out anybody that was interpreting the Bible and have them executed. So the church had was killing people for reviewing the Bible and interpreting it for over 1,000 years. Okay. It wasn't until 1535 that the Bible was made public for people to see. And that was, it was because of the, people like Martin Luther and others that did some work to really, and William Tyndale, he joined Martin Luther and the others to that were criticizing the church and wanted to make the Holy Bible or the scriptures public for people to be able to read and interpret on their own. So he was burned at the stake. William Tyndale was burned at the stake and condemned after being held for 16 months in prison. So it's interesting. Even when you read the back of the NRSV, the New Oxford Annotated Bible, which is what we used in college to interpret the scriptures. But when you read in the back there, it says that he was killed by his enemies. All right, which is like, okay. The church had the church had a head. You know, they were hunting people down, arguably for over 1,000 years and killing them. And you know, and the kings and queens, they were doing, you know, they were hunting these people down, and it was in coordination with the Catholic Church for interpreting the Bible. But and when you read the back of the NRSV, it says he was killed by his enemies. Well, when you read the story of what happened, it's really questionable about the ties these individuals may have had with the church. Nobody's quite sure, but you know, why would somebody just, you know, hunt a guy down? I mean, he was in hiding. Tyndale was in hiding most of his life, and I'll get into why. So Tyndale, he studied at Oxford. He learned Greek and other languages so he could interpret the Bible. That's because the scriptures were written in Greek, and so people they didn't, you know, the average person couldn't read Greek, and so the priests, they went to school to learn how to interpret the Bible. And so only the priests were allowed to interpret the Bible. Only the church was. All right. And so while Tyndale was in college, he accused the bishop for hypocrisy because the bishop was wearing lavish gold rings and clothes and jewelry, while the people, what they were requiring, they were mandating people pay the church, right? They were mandating people pay from their poverty. So the people were all poor and the church was rich, right? All right, so yeah, so we already went over that. Only the church was allowed to interpret the Bible for over 1,000 years. Anytime I discuss the Bible, I use the NRSV. The 4th edition PDF is what I have, but I actually have the copy that I used in school, which was the 3rd edition. But I have both, and but I mainly refer to the 4th edition in this presentation. All right, so in the Nag Hammadi, these are all the codices, and you'll see in the first codex, the second one is the Apocryphon of James, and that's the one that I'm going to go over in this presentation. The Gospel of Truth is my next one, and I started peeking at that and reading a little bit into that, and that one's really interesting too. All right, so we'll go on why the Gnostic scriptures, why go over that in this presentation. And it's because I question what's in the church, what the church has done to the Bible. First of all, do you know how many books are in the Holy Bible? This is really weird. How many books are in the Holy Bible? 66. That's weird. And in Revelation, it talks about the mark of the beast being 666. And the Bible ends with 66 books. I think there's just some intention behind why certain scriptures were allowed in the Bible. It's weird. And so I'm going to go over some of that stuff. All right. So the church persecuted, condemned, and crucified anyone attempting to translate, review the scriptures during the 1,000 years of the Dark Ages. Now it's been academically reduced to the Middle Ages. And I argue it is an attempt to change history and alter the church's terrifying past. When you conceal the past, you can continue it in different forms. So when I was in college, you know, and this was, you know, not that long ago, it was, you know, 2004 through 2009, I was in school. And I referred to it as the Dark Ages, that time frame. And one of the professors was like, we don't call it the Dark Ages anymore. We call it the Middle Ages. And so again, I think it's because, you know, they're trying to change history. They're trying to alter the history's terrifying past. Like the church didn't do any of that, right? uh, and the all right, so Martin Luther and others, all right. Well, I'm going to just say this: the church charged for atonement, and I can't remember the actual term. You can go look it up. But what they did is they were trying to build more churches. They were trying to build out the church. They wanted more money, and they did really morally, ethically wrong things. So one of them is, all right, so they charge for, you know, if you had committed anything that was, you know, in violation to the commandments, you could go to the church and say, I would like to get forgiveness. And they had this whole list of fees that they would charge for certain, to forgive certain sins. So like if you committed adultery, I think it was like $2.75. And if you lied, it was something else. If you, you know, they just had this whole list, right? And you could just go to the church and they would charge you a fee and they would forgive your sins. So that was a way for them to raise money. Additionally, they managed a prostitution ring. So in the 12th century, in a borough of London known as South Warwick, had 18 licensed brothels with about 1,000 prostitutes, and all of them were ran by the church for raising money for building extravagant churches. All right, so you can go look that up. There's an author, Parks, it's in my references. She talks about it, but yeah, so, and then the church today, it rejects the original scriptures of the Nag Hammadi and the Dead Sea Scrolls. Only some of the texts that were duplicate in the Bible are used or referred to by the NRSV. So isn't that strange? Like the church, the Catholic Church, it doesn't matter what denomination you are, the Catholic Church is deciding what goes in the Bible. All right. And again, and they have a horrible past, right? So why do they get to choose what our scriptures are? Right? Why do they get to choose if they have done these horrible things? They've killed and persecuted people. They burned them at the stake. They were running a prostitute ring. Why do they get to decide what is original scriptures and not? Right? So many believe that the Holy Bible is missing books, and therefore the meaning of the Bible is altered. And I argue that the Nag Hammadi scriptures confirm these beliefs. Yeah, definitely. All right, so the Nag Hammadi scriptures illustrate the significance of Jesus and his purpose. Really, I haven't read the other one, so I'm going to really change that to say the Apocryphon of James, it illustrates the secret book of James, it illustrates the significance of Jesus and his purpose. Right, and I argue that this is a problem for the church. The church has vested interest in controlling the narrative, and therefore it is biased. Their opinion is, not therefore relevant, right? So because they have a horrible past, they've done horrible things, they are controlling the narrative. Why do they get to decide? They're not any better than you and I. So we have a right to look at these scriptures and decide for yourself, right? So hopefully you'll get some good insight out of this presentation with that. So Jesus, all right, so he condemned the church for being hypocrites, right? And so basically, these are just some scriptures that I have here where, he condemned others for being a hypocrite, right? Mainly leadership, a lot of times for the church. And so, I don't know, I can go over a couple of these, but there's so many in the Bible where he was condemning the church. I mean, just like when he went to the temple and he was outside the temple and they were all, again, doing the same thing. They were paying these people on the outside of the church to have sacrament done. So you could pay for a lamb to be sacrificed in your name. And Jesus got real upset and he came out there and he flipped all the tables up and he was like, this is just nonsense. Basically he's pointing out the church is being hypocrites because, again, this is on temple property and this is all being condoned by the church. And so he was calling them out for being hypocrites. All right. And you can just look, there's so many places. All right. But I'll just go over a couple. So here's one of the scriptures from the Holy Bible, from Mark. And it says, should we pay them or should we not? But knowing their hypocrisy, he said to them, why are you putting me to the test? Bring me a denarius and let me see it. And they brought one. Then he said to them, whose head is on this and whose title? They answered, the emperor's. Jesus said to them, give to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God. Right. So, again, this is just an event that happened, and Jesus is just pointing out that, they're charging, they're acting like God. It's really what's happening. They're acting like God, and they're requiring the people to pray and pray to, the church, pray to the kings, and give money to them. So I'll just let you, if you want to go over that, maybe I'll do one more here. Woe to the scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you tithe mint, dill, and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faith. It is these you ought to have practiced without neglecting the others. You blind guides, you strained out a gnat, but swallow a camel. So, the Pharisees, they were considered both these kings and also priests, right? And so he's accusing them of, living the high life and then, not really focusing on what's important: justice, mercy, and faith, right? That's, of all humanity. Really what these individuals are doing is enslaving the population, and they're using religion to do that, right? And so he's pointing that out and calling them hypocrites. Okay, so I just wanted to go over some terms for God. When you go to the back of the NRSV, in the Bible that I read, when you go to the back of it, there's all these terms, and you can look at different terms, the definitions of these different terms. And I pulled up one for God, and it said, the definition for God was a term for this intrinsic source that we originate from. Okay. And I just want to point that out because I believe that in some denominations of Christianity, it's like they're painting a picture of God as this human, and that is over all of the planet, or the universe, right? But this is the definition that comes out of the Bible. It's the intrinsic source that we all originate from. That is God. And that is what Jesus describes as God, right? So just want to point that out because, God can be called many things, all right? And it said that, so this was very common during the days of the Old Testament and during the times of Jesus. And that is when you are sleeping, you connect to God in your dreams. So that's where you connect to him. And, people would, even including Mary that had Jesus, said that God came to her in her dreams. And Joseph, Jesus's father, God came to me in my dreams and showed me that this was going to happen, right? So that's how you connect to God, is in your dreams, okay? I think that's just, these 2 points are very important to understanding what is God and how do we connect to God. And it's been distorted, all right? It's been distorted. Okay, so Jesus, he uses the term Father to describe the source, right? And he says that there can only be one master, the Father in heaven, all right? And so there's many scriptures that that illustrate this, that you can only have one master. And so a lot of people will, they're feeling persecuted by the government and all that. And Jesus always goes back that you only can serve one Father. In fact, he was being persecuted by Caiaphas, right? So what happened is Jesus conducted a healing at the temple on the Sabbath, and Caiaphas, who was the head priest, went after Jesus, and brought him in to be tried in the dark of the night, without others witnessing the trial. And he, is accusing Jesus of all these things. And he says to Jesus, like, why don't you speak up for yourself? Why don't you stand up for yourself? Because they were just condemning him, and they were convicting him of heresy, right? And he said that there can only be one master, and that my master is in heaven, and you are only persecuting me because of somebody else gave you the authority to do that, but I don't answer to you. So yeah, so there can only be one master, and that's coming from Jesus. And I think we get lost sometimes and we forget that. So I think these are very important points. So atonement. So what is atonement? I'm going to go over some definitions and some history. And atonement, so if you look this up online and you look for definitions, the first thing that comes up is they are reparations for wrong or injury. All right. And so another definition is it's a forgiveness or expiration of sins. So Catholic priests were given the authority to conduct forgiveness or to help expire sins. And only, for 1,000 years, only a priest could do that, right? So Martin Luther came along, and who was a former Catholic priest. He was banished from the church. And other reformists criticized the church for acting like God, claiming atonement is only between God and the sinner, right? So he was criticizing the church and saying, hey, you're acting like God, and the only person, or the only two that can forgive or conduct atonement is the person, the sinner, and God, right? Those are only two. So the church required sinners to confess their sins so that they could be forgiven by the church. The church and the popes have a long history of claiming to be Jesus or God. And, again, I'm not doing this to assault a Catholic, because we're, that's not the point. I'm just pointing out some things, and the reason why it's all going to come together in the end. So just hang in there with me. All right. So the church and the popes have a long history of claiming to be Jesus and God. And so the Pope literally means the Father in Latin. All right. And the Father that Jesus refers to is God the Creator. And so Pope Pius X said, the Pope represents Jesus Christ himself. So this is a problem. This is a conflict. Bishop Patrick Dunn of Auckland said, it seems that Pope John Paul II now presides over the universal church from his place upon Christ's cross. Another example, gloss of extravagantes of Pope John the 12th or 22nd. This is what he said. But to believe our Lord God, the Pope, the establisher of said decretal, and of this could not decree as he did decree, should be accounted heretical. All right, so you can make out that on your own. Pope John Paul wrote that names like the Holy Father are applicable to the Pope, even though calling him that is counter to the gospel. He referred to himself as the way, which Jesus called himself. So again, this is the Pope claiming to be the Holy Father and also claiming to be Jesus at the same time. And there's just numerous examples in the past of popes doing this. And really, the papacy means the Father, and just referring to the Pope is really, it's like you're serving another master. So you're serving this other master rather than God. And this is contrary to what Jesus taught, right? There's only one master, and that is the Father in heaven. Okay. So the hero's journey, and we're going to get to some meat of this, right? The hero's journey, it's a circular path of separating from God and then returning back to God after experiencing challenges and temptations, right? Jesus said, I am the way and the truth and the life. All right. And I'm going to, throughout this presentation, I'm going to break this down. All right. You must learn the way in order to return to God. Jesus is the way. This is just breaking this down continually, right? And we're going to break this down over the rest of the presentation. But you must learn the way in order to return to God. Jesus is the way, the path, the path back to God. Through knowing the truth, you will know that your way back to God. The truth is that there is a hero's journey that everybody is going through. This is the path that we're on. This is and Jesus was the way to get through the hero's journey. He was an example. He was like showing us the way, right? So yeah, he was an example to walk the path through the hero's journey. That's what he wanted. That's what his purpose was. That's why he came here. He came here to show us the way, that we're on this hero's journey. And I'm going to show you the hero's journey, why it's so important, right? Jesus refers to this path as the hero's journey as God's will. So every time you hear Jesus in the Bible say God's will, what he's talking about is this intrinsic thing that is built into the framework of our incarnation in this density, all right? In the third density. And if you know the law of one, the third density is a separation from God, right? And that's what we're experiencing in the hero's journey. And I'm going to illustrate this really well. And Jesus refers to that intrinsic framework as God's will. Okay. A surprising and okay. So a revelation. So we got the hero's journey. This is the definition of the hero's journey, right? And the next definition is revelation. And that is a surprising and previous unknown fact, especially one made in a dramatic way. So just know that we're going to jump into the next slide. We're going to jump into the hero's way, hero's journey. And these are going to be important to remember. A revelation is a surprising and previously unknown fact, especially one made in a dramatic way. And knowledge, it's truth about the hero's journey. It's the truth about God's way, God's will. All right. So just a couple other things. So the dark night of the soul. So you often hear individuals in the esoteric community talk about the dark night of the soul. And what the dark night of the soul is, it was a poem that was called the Saint John of the Cross. And the author is unknown. All right. It was 2 incomplete books that were that were written between 1577 and 1579. There's some, some people think they know who wrote this book, but nonetheless, there wasn't ever published with a known author. All right. What the dark night of the soul is it's a spiritual crisis toward the union with God. All right. It's a spiritual crisis toward the union with God. It's a prolonged period of spiritual darkness. All right. And these are some terms that are used to describe what the dark night of the soul is. All right. It's an existential crisis. It's a spiritual transformation. Some of the feelings that you experience are depression, feeling of being alone and lost. All right. It's a sense of meaningless. And it's a hollow and empty feeling. No meaning to life, and nothing seems to make sense. These are descriptive phrases, terms. Significant transition into a deeper perception of life. So that's what it is. It's a significant transition to a deeper perception of life. All right. And the soul, it's a quote that I found, the soul tells the mode and manner in which it departs as to its affection from itself and from all things, dying through a true mortification to all of them and to itself, to arrive at a sweet and delicious life with God. So this is actually right out of the Dark Night of the Soul, right out of the St. John's of the Cross, that book, one of the books. Again, what it says is the soul tells the mode and manner in which it departs as to its affection from itself and from all things, dying through a true mortification to all of them and to itself, to arrive at a sweet and delicious life with God. So it's an excellent highlight of what is happening in the hero's journey. There's a separation and depart, all right, and this darkness that occurs, and then it ends with a reunification with God. All right. So there are many songwriters and artists that have expressed the dark night of the soul. If anybody knows Lorena McKennitt, loved her in the 90s, still have some of her music, love McKennitt. And she has a whole album called The Mask in the Mirror. And but there's rap songs that go over the dark night. So it's in pop culture. So all right, so this is the hero's journey and a real basic view. All right, real basic view. And I created this flow chart based on my understanding because there's some gaps when you look at the hero's journey. And I belong to a men's group, and they had a definition of the hero's journey, and I've seen it many times in other areas throughout my life, and I think it was missing some pieces, and I really hope this highlights and illustrates it in a more authentic way. All right, so really what is occurring in our incarnation in this third density, as Ra describes in the Law of One, right, is we're going from this separation from God. We're going from this dark to light event. That's what's happening in your life over and over and over again. And so it's a dark to light event, right? So you begin life in the dark, and you experience some challenges and temptations along the way. And many people describe this separation, this darkness period. They describe a moment in time when they feel betrayed by God. All right, so maybe you lost a sibling, maybe you lost a parent, maybe some just hard things happen to you, and you go through this event where you feel that you are betrayed from God. And then all these challenges and temptations happen where, it's like they're trying to prove to you, see, God's not really in your life. God doesn't love you. And there's all these you know, government or whatever, they're all showing you to trying to prove to you that there is no God, right? And you go through these challenges and temptations in your life where you, you know, other events happen, right? So, and then eventually you get to this point where you experience a spiritual death. And that is called, it has been referred to, I don't want to say it's called, but it's referred to as the dark night of the soul, right? And again, what happens in the dark night of the soul is a sense of meaningless, um, being depressed, lone and lost, you know, and what you get out of it is this rebirth where you have a deeper sense of meaning of life. But there's going to be this moment where you feel like all is lost, right? But you go through this rebirth, and then after this rebirth, you return back to God. That's what we are experiencing in this lifetime. So it's a separation from God. And what you're doing is what you're experiencing is the known world and the conflict between the known world and the unknown world, right? So there are these things that everybody believes to be the truth, right? But you're experiencing this hero's journey, which is really the unknown world. And you're learning about these unknown things that when you get to the rebirth and your return to God, they will become more known to you, right? But there's this conflict between the known world and the unknown world. And you're going from dark to light. And it's a separation from God and it's a return back to God. All right. That is the hero's journey in God's will, and the simplest that I can explain. And I'll tell you that in my men's group and other groups that I had, they would call this the separation and the return. But separation from what, right? Separation from what? It's a separation from God. That's what you're experiencing, and you're experiencing a return back to God. All right. All right. So these are some things that are often incorporated with the hero's journey. You know, so when you are early in life, you're going to have this call to adventure, you know, and you can see this hero's journey. It's in movies, it's everywhere, right? So if you ever watched The Call to the Wild, you know, it's like the man, he gets called to this adventure. He was raised in a city and wants to go to the country and, you know, go to the wild. He has a call to the wild, right? He gets a call to the event, call to adventure. We all have this, you know, when we're children, we're growing up, we're like, oh, we want to go do something on our own. You know, we want to get away from our parents. We have this call to adventure. And Jesus's life. So I'm going to just go over this. I'll explain it to you in Jesus's terms, because Jesus is a perfect overlay to the hero's journey. All right. But you'll have spiritual aid that, you know, somebody, you might learn some spirituality along the way, you know, and you're going to have all these guardians and mentors and helpers that come to you as you're on this adventure, even though you're going through challenges and temptations. And some of them might actually make you angry because they might say some truths that that are a conflict to what you're wanting, your darkness that you are in right here. And so you might get angry at them, but they actually end up helping you on your journey. In some cases, you know, your mentor, you know, somebody you really like. But what happens is when you go through the dark night of the soul and you go through this resurrection, you go through this rebirth, right? Your helpers and mentors, they all go away because you step into your power over here. When you go through the separation of God, there is this threshold where a transformation is beginning. Even though you're going through some challenges and temptations, you're going through this transformation that is beginning at some point, right? And like I said, you're gonna feel like you've been betrayed by God. You know, we could probably move this up here or whatever, but you know, and these aren't exactly all in order, but These are things that you experience in the darkness. You know, you're going to feel betrayed by God. And the thing is you're going to betray God. that's the projection that's happening. You think you're being betrayed by God, but in fact, you're betraying God. See? Yeah, it's a mirroring effect that is occurring. All right, so you go through the dark night of soul. You go on, go to the other side here. You go through a rebirth, and in this rebirth is when you have revelations that occur. You're like epiphanies that occur. Wow, right? New insights to life. So the unknown world is starting to be more known to you. You forgive others. You forgive yourself. These are requirements in the rebirth. See, and if you are not experiencing atonement and revelation, then you're over here. See what I'm saying? You're still in the darkness, the separation from God. You haven't gone through your dark night of soul, because you know you end up having these insights, and you can see the importance of this forgiveness. Because like Jesus said at one point, when the woman ran out into the yard, and the men were chasing her and wanting to throw stones at her because she committed adultery, and Jesus is drawing in the sand. He's kind of like, you know, he's looking, he's not really looking. And they said to Jesus, Master, what should we do? And he says, let the first person who is free from sin to cast the first stone. Or really, like, let the first person who has never sinned cast the first stone, right? What you realize in the rebirth is you have done some things in your past. That is what happened over here in the challenges and temptations. You're not perfect. Well, you are perfect in the eyes of God, but you have made some mistakes, and you know it is so important to let go, to forgive yourself, right? And what you're also finding is that you're not perfect. Just as Jesus was saying, you're not free from sin. You're not free from sin. And so you can't judge others. You can't throw stones at others. So you have to forgive other people. And it doesn't matter what they've done. Everything has to be forgiven, right? And you'll see that as it's necessary to go through that. It's, you know, once you do that, you complete this transformation, right? You're done with this transformation. And that is where you can be what is called so Joseph Campbell wrote the book on the hero's journey, right? And he calls it the gift. Once you're over here, you become the gift. And I argue, when you read the law of one, when you read the law of one, it talks about, well, there's only two polarities. There's service to others and service to self, right? Service to others is what we know as positive, and service to self is what we know as negative, right? So to become service to others, you know, that's where you're this gift, right? Because all of your interactions with people, you know, that they're over here and they're in this life of suffering, in this separation from God. And so your interactions with others now are in a way that is more of a service to them. Okay. And that's when you can see how to really be a service to others. And you can't until you go through this death and rebirth. All right. And then after you're this gift to others, and you can look at the acts of Jesus and the acts of after he resurrected, his actions afterwards are a gift to others. Is he experiencing suffering? No, right? He is now preaching and showing how to be a service to others. Okay. And then that's when you go through this ascension. Okay. And it's only after you go through this whole process that you can ascend. Okay. That's what happened to Jesus. Okay. And we'll overlay this with Jesus. Okay. So we take Jesus and he's going on the hero's journey and he gets this call to adventure, and he really is missing from the biblical text for 30 years. There is a little explanation about, well, when Joseph and Mary, they take him to the temple, they lose him and all the people, and they start heading back, and they're like, where is Jesus? Can't find Jesus. And they end up going back, and he's over there, having a philosophical and religious discussion with these elders, right? And he was 12. That's the last time we hear about Jesus until he comes back when he's about 30. Okay. When you read the Law of One, Ross says, well, when he was 25 and a half, approximately, he returned back to Mary and Joseph to learn how to be a carpenter. So he wanted to be a carpenter. And that during that time frame, he's just, learning this, what Ross says is learning the skills of his father. Right. Okay. So but mainly he's on this adventure. And I really think he probably went to Tibet and India, and he was a rabbi from a very young age, and he was studying he was doing a comparative religious studies. He was studying other religions, in other ways. He was out there on this call to adventure. Okay. And he comes back when he's 30, and you can fill in the spiritual aid guardians. Well, actually, yeah, you can fill in all kinds of people here who were his mentors and his helpers. You could probably say Judas was his helper, Paul was Peter was his mentor. He had people. You can fill in the gaps. All right. And then when he goes through challenges and temptations, that's really the 40 days and 40 nights, right? Because he goes out into the desert and he's being tempted by the devil, and the devil's like, or Satan, right? He comes to him and says, you want to be a king? I'll give you a whole kingdom of people, and you can rule over them for your entire life, right? But he's going through these challenges and temptations, and Satan is promising him all this glory and wealth and fame, and he's like, no, I don't want any of that. So he turns it all down, and he goes through this betrayal. He's on the cross, right? He gets strung up on the cross, and he's up there suffering. And one of the men on the cross, actually the Romans, the Satirians, which are the Roman army, were down there on the ground, and they were persecuting him. They were like, oh, you're such a king, you're on a cross, you're dying, and they mock him with a sign that they strung up above him in 3 languages. They put the King of the Jews, right? And they were mocking him, right? And they're the centurions were on the ground, and they were mocking him. And one of the men on the cross that was next to him says, you're the King of the Jews. Why don't you get yourself down from here? Why are you, why are you up here in this situation? You can get yourself down from here. And Jesus says at that time, Father, why have you forsaken me? Right? Because even at that point, he was experiencing, his dark night of the soul, right? Betrayal. He felt betrayed by God. And he's showing us that you're going to go through this. All right. You're going through this same journey. And he's an example, right? And then, he dies on the cross, right? And he goes through resurrection. He goes through a resurrection. And really we can see, and then we could put in the rest of the other gospels that happen after the resurrection. But like I said, he comes back, and he, helps his disciples learn how to preach the good word, right? The good news. All right. So that's the hero's journey. It's a separation from dark to light. You have this dark night of the soul, or this death that happens, this rebirth and this return back to God. That's what you're experiencing. All right. So why the hero's journey? Well, when you overlay it with the Gnostic texts, you can see the way that Jesus discusses in the book of John. I am the way and the truth and the life. Everyone is going through the hero's journey, and Jesus descended to show us how to complete the journey. His message was that we are to save ourselves. All right. He brought the fruit, which the fruit is the knowledge, to prepare us for the journey. All right. He says, when you are filled, you will become my equal. And this is in the Apocryphon of James, right? He says, once you have the knowledge, then there is no reason to be afraid. That's what he is saying. Once you have the knowledge, there's no reason to be afraid, because I've told you the storyline. I've showed you what the story is. I showed you what you are going to go through. And so you know that you're going to go through it too. And when you get to the end, you're going to ascend, right? As I have done, okay? You'll realize that everyone is going through the hero's journey. When we use the tools Jesus discusses, then we pass through the journey smoothly, right? The more resistance you have, i.e. losing faith, the more difficult the journey. So it's like in the consciousness in this lifetime, when you're going through this hero's journey, and along the way you're praying, thank you God for showing me my lessons, thank you, and having faith in the process. Although you might be going through a lot, I really think that's karma, and the karma is created by you losing faith, right? So when you get angry, which is okay to get angry, but when you get angry and then you lash out at other people, that causes a karmic reaction. And what that does is make the veil thicker, so it's harder to see the unknown world, right? So the conflict between the known world and the unknown world gets more distant, right? So the more resistance you have, the more difficult the journey, right? It's harder to see. But the way that you thin the veil is by forgiving others. When you get persecuted, because you're going to be, when you are on this path, and you learn to, just accept others' persecution, that's what's going to happen, and oppression, and forgive yourself, then you, after a while, it's like you're walking on water. Literally, you're walking on water, and there's this bubble around you, and nothing seems to really affect you. Why? Because you have really taken on the knowledge, and when you have the knowledge of the hero's journey, there's really no reason to be afraid anymore. Okay. So why the hero's journey continued? The biblical scriptures were the hope. Okay. Gospels. So the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the gospel actually means hope. All right. And what they do is provide examples through parables, which are stories, and they are designed to give us the strength, the faith, and knowledge to complete the journey. So you're supposed to be able to look at this text and go, oh, wow, that's what Jesus had to go through, and I'm going to go through some level of oppression and persecution, So there's a moment when Jesus is standing on, in front of Pontius Pilate, who was one of the governors for the Roman Empire, right? And was it Bethlehem? I think it was Bethlehem or Jerusalem. Maybe it was Jerusalem. He's a governor there, and he hears Jesus's story, and he's like, well, I have no problem with this man, but the priests of the Jewish priests, the high priest, they were like, oh, this man's a problem. And so they were trying to have him, executed. And, but Pontius Pilate is like, I don't know what to do with this guy. I see there's nothing wrong with him. And so what he does is he asks the people, and he had what is his name? Barabbas? Yeah, Barabbas. He has Barabbas in the prison who, he's done some things like killed a few people, and, he killed a centurion, a Roman army soldier. He killed a centurion. So he was in prison, and he calls out Barabbas, and Jesus, he puts him on the steps, and, says, well, I'll let the people decide. Who do you want to go? Who should I release? Barabbas, this murderer, or should I release the king of the Jews? And, people were really offended by, they didn't even know who Jesus was, right? Everybody in the audience was like, there was only a couple people that knew who Jesus was. And so he was being tried publicly, not with his peers, but with others that had no idea who he was. And they were offended by the fact that he was calling himself, king of the Jews. So they said, oh, we'll just hang Jesus, right? And meanwhile, Jesus again is standing on the steps, and all this is going on. And, Pontius Pilate asked Jesus again, why, do you have anything to say to yourself? And he says nothing. He stands there and he accepts the persecution. And so again, the scriptures are meant to be an example. There's going to be times in your relationship where you are on the right side of the tracks. You are right. And yet your partner is going to persecute you. All right. Your parents are going to persecute you when they're wrong. Okay. It's going to happen in your life. And so what Jesus says to do is turn the other cheek, right? And that's what he does on the steps. It's what he does in front of Caiaphas. It's what he does in front of Pontius Pilate as he's being condemned, right? So the stories are designed to give you the strength that you can get through it. All right. And so you may hear the hero's journey, you may not know of it, but you see it as a whole new experience. When you see it, it's like Neo, I think that's his name in the Matrix. You understand that everything is a part of the framework. In other words, God is everywhere. God is everything. You start to see it, right? And that happens when you get in this rebirth. You're able to see it's in everything. Okay. God's will is in everything. It's this framework. It's the source energy. You can take out God, call it source, but we're living in this framework. And the best way to describe it is the hero's journey. That's what is happening in this density, in this incarnation, right? You're experiencing it. And once you have the knowledge, and this is what Jesus will say in the text, I'll show you. Once you have the knowledge that this is actually occurring, then you can, it's nothing but like an hour in your lifetime. It's nothing, right? So you just muddle your way through it, and you get through it. And then but as you're actually, because you have this knowledge, your suffering decreases substantially, because there's no reason to suffer. You know that you're going to go through it. It's a part of this incarnation. It's what's happening. And then you're going to ascend out of it. And then you're going to be in this. I mean, you can read the rest of the Bible. There's all these examples. What happens? You experience love and light and all this stuff, right? So that's part of the ascension. Okay, so measures of the hero's journey. So these are things that Jesus refers to, and they're meant to be his guides, right? And that's what I've been talking about this along the way. So how to recognize evil, right? How to recognize evil is when you're being oppressed. When someone's oppressing you, then you know evil is present, okay? When you're being persecuted, then you know evil is present, okay? And others, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they're your friends or your family, but and you have done this, you will do this to others, okay? Everybody does this, but when you know this is a measure, when you're oppressing, or you're persecuting, or you're being persecuted, you know that this is the evil, the negative energy that is present, okay? When you're being censored, okay, restricting knowledge, you know evil is present. Okay, take this as an example. John the Baptist was out there preaching to everybody that they're going to ascend. All you have to do is accept Jesus Christ, or all you have to do is accept the Christ energy. You got to go through this baptism. There's a process. He's telling everybody what you need to do, right? You know what they did? They captured him and they cut off his head, right? So when you see censorship, you know that evil is present, all right? And you know that when the truth is getting out, um, that's what's being censored. They don't censor evil. They don't censor darkness. The evil censors knowledge and truth, okay? So when you see censorship, you know that there's truth and knowledge in that censorship, okay? Hypocrisy. And hypocrisy is really accusing others of what you're doing. Okay. And so when you can see hypocrisy in others, when you can see hypocrisy in government, church, or whatever, right? The church is going around preaching, right way of living, and meanwhile they have 1,000 prostitutes. They're not really living according to, God's will or Jesus's will, right? That's hypocrisy. Okay, so when you see hypocrisy, and really it's when you see others accusing people of what they are doing, right? When you see that, this is one of the evil measures, right? And when you condemnation, crucifixion, and injustice, when you see all these things, then these are measures of evil. God measures knowledge. So these are God measures, knowledge and truth. When you and God speaks through insight. So that's we're told to look for insights, along the way. All right. So these are measures. All right. So we'll start getting into the Apocryphon of James. I'm going to take a drink of my coffee. My coffee here. All right. So the Apocryphon of James. Deep breath. All right. So the Apocryphon means the secret book. Okay. So there are apocryphons that are in the Bible, and some of them are removed. So, and this is one of them, right? So it wasn't removed from the Bible, but it's found in the Nag Hammadi scriptures. And what I believe is that the Apocryphon of James solidifies the purpose in life, our purpose in life, which is to complete the hero's journey. All right, solidifies that. It's very important. It means the secret books of James, right? AOJ. So if you see AOJ, it's the secret book of James. So here's an example. All right, so we're going to go over some scriptures that I pulled out of the secret book of James, and to show you how this is the hero's journey. Okay. Before I do that, I'm just going to point out that some other things along the way, specifically this first part. And these are Jesus's words. Okay. Supposedly this is Jesus speaking to James. Okay. One of the disciples speaking to James. And what he says is, "Verily I say unto you, no one will ever enter the kingdom of heaven at my bidding, but only because you yourselves are full. Leave James and Peter to me, that I may fill them." Okay. So again, so in this one, he's talking about when he says full, it means that you've received the knowledge, the truth. Okay. So this is really important. No one will ever enter the kingdom of heaven at my bidding. And this is the problem with the Bible or Christianity, is they are saying that you must worship Jesus. And Jesus is saying here, no one will enter the kingdom at my bidding. So he's not the doorway to heaven. He's not the doorway to ascension. Okay. He's saying that you have to do your own work. And there's other scriptures here. I'll pull that out, right? And so he's talking about fill them with knowledge, and leave them to me and I'll fill them. And then another part here is, and your heart is drunken. Do you not then desire to be sober? So in the scriptures, whenever you hear drunk or drunken, it means to be asleep. Okay. And sober means to be woke or awaken. All right. And it's a multi-dimensional thing, right? So if you are drinking, using drugs, you're asleep, right? And it's also meant as a metaphor for not hearing or knowing the truth. So if you don't know the truth, you're drunk, okay? And you're totally asleep. If you don't have the truth, you're not awake, okay? You can't be woken without the truth. You have to have the truth, you have to have the knowledge. But really the key to it is desire. You have to desire to be sober. If you have the desire to be woken, you're going to seek the information and it's going to permeate. Okay. So desire is key and having the information is key. All right. So another scripture here is, woe to those who have seen the Son of Man. Son of Man is Jesus. Blessed will they be who have seen the man, and they who have not consorted with him, and they who have not spoken with him, and they who have not listened to anything from him. Yours is life. Know then that he healed you when you were ill, that you might reign. God healed you. Woe to those who have found relief from their illness, for they will relapse into illness. Blessed are they who have not been ill and have not known relief before falling ill. Yours is the kingdom of God. Therefore, I say to you, become full and leave no space within you empty. For he who is coming can mock you. This is so much going on in this statement. Okay. So God is always involved in guiding your lessons so that when you wake, you will know his presence in your life. Okay. And when you have the knowledge, you cannot be persecuted, oppressed, or mocked. Really, you can't. You know that what people doing the persecution, oppressing and mocking you, those people are drunk. They're asleep. Okay. And see, you have the knowledge and you can look at them, one, with compassion and forgiveness, and know that their veil is thick, and so they can't see the truth. They haven't suffered enough to begin to get the desire to be sober, right? So we incarnate over and over and over again, and those experiences are in our DNA, they're in our consciousness, whether we actively are aware of them or not. It's not necessary, but they're in and they drive our desire to be sober. Okay. And what you learn is this intrinsic source. Okay. Where God is just a word to describe our source, the source that we come from. That source is always involved in guiding your lessons. All right. So that it will help you to wake. Okay. And when you, at some point, you're going to start to be able to see how that source is operating in your life. Okay. And when you have the knowledge, and the knowledge is really knowing that this hero's journey exists, right? When you know that it exists and you know that you're going to go through persecution, oppression, and you're going to be mocked, just as Jesus did. He was he was in the army, when you go to jump school, there's, or anytime you jump out of a plane, there's always one guy that has to jump off first, right? And then everybody else goes after him. Well, or her, right? But when that person jumps, that's the first person out the door, right? And that's Jesus is saying to you that, he was that guy. He jumped out the door, and he's showing you that you're going to go through these things. Okay. That was his purpose. Okay. So therefore you must be in want while it is possible to fill you, and be full while it is possible for you to want, so that you may be able to fill yourselves more. So you have to be, so when we're kids, it's important to learn, some spirituality, right? Many of us, we go to church, we learn, stuff, but we don't really learn it. We hear it, and it doesn't really permeate. It permeates, but it doesn't resonate. Okay. And so that's why, like, when you do read the Bible, at some point Jesus says it's important to meditate on the scriptures, because until you're ready to receive the knowledge and understand it, it doesn't make sense. Like right now, okay, I only started rereading the Bible here a month ago or so. So even though I went to college and studied, I wasn't listening. It was permeating my consciousness, but I wasn't really paying attention. You know what I mean? And it's because it wasn't possible for me to be filled. Now I can be filled. It makes sense when I read it. I can see the unknown world. I can see things, right? Well, that's what he's saying is happening here. So you have to be in want while it's possible to fill you. So it's like, it's almost impossible to fill you unless you're in want. And it's impossible to fill you with knowledge unless you're wanting it. And so and to seek out more, right? So you're looking more, you're wanting to know. There's this point in this time, there's just a point in time where you've gone through enough in your life where you're going to be seeking out this knowledge, right? You're going to be seeking the truths. I really think that he goes on here to say that we just need to get the knowledge, right? We really just need to receive it. We need to receive the truth so we know what's going on. And this source, it's permeating everywhere. Okay. It's permeating in the books that we read. It's permeating in the movies that we see. This hero's journey is laid in every stitch of the fabric of our existence. It's trying to show us that we're going through this, as much as it also is dragging us through the darkness. So, all right, so on to this next one. But if you are oppressed by Satan and persecuted, and you do his Father's God's will, right? Do his will, God's will. I say to you, he will love you, and he will make you equal with me, and reckon you to have become beloved through his providence by your own choice. So evil presses and persecutes, we know that. God's will is everyone will go through the hero's journey. In this density, everybody's going through the hero's journey. Everybody's doing it. Some people are in the dark. Some people are without the knowledge. You're getting the knowledge now, but everybody's going through it. And when we have the knowledge, you become equal with Jesus. Okay? So that's the important thing to know. Complete the hero's journey and you will ascend, because that's what he's saying here. Once you have the information, and you get to the point where it permeates, you go through this ascension, okay, and you will become equal with Jesus. We have always been equal with Jesus. We are a being, and he was a being. He, in the law of one terms, he remembered more than what He remembered more than most, is what Ross says. He remembered more than what most. And what he remembered, he decided to show us. So we had that to see and experience and go through on our own. But it was meant to be like, hey man, if you know the scary parts of the movie, it's not going to be so scary anymore. Okay. And we're not supposed to be on our knees worshiping Jesus. We're supposed to be looking at him. Oh, he's my brother. And he's like my older brother, you know, like he's the one that shows me how to do a few things. So when I get to that age, I'm like, oh yeah, I can go through it too. But he's my brother, see? And that's what he's saying here. Okay, next one. Or do you not know that you have yet to be abused and to be accused unjustly? Have you yet to be shut up in prison and condemned unlawfully and crucified without reason and buried as myself by the evil one? Again, he's telling you right here, man, you're going to go through this. You're going to go through injustice. You're going to go through persecution. You're going to be oppressed. You're going to be condemned and possibly crucified. We're all going through this. Okay. I hope I haven't beat you guys up. I hope I haven't beat people up too much. Oh, all right. All right. So on to the next one. If you considered how long the world existed before you and how long it will exist after you, you'll find that your life is one single day and your sufferings one single hour. Remember my cross and my death, and you will live. Okay. So he's saying, remember the hero's journey. We're all on it. That's what it is. Separation from God, death and rebirth, return to God, and you'll ascend. Just remember that. Just remember that, and you're going to live, man. You're this whole life, this materialism, all this stuff that's going on here, it's all a part of the separation from God. And once you have the knowledge, you realize, hey man, that's not my movie. You're like Neo, I think that's his name, in the Matrix, right? You're like the guy in the Matrix that says, you figured it out. That's not my reality. That's the Matrix. And the Matrix's purpose is to take people through the separation and back to rebirth, right? But most people are stuck over on the dark side of it, right? They're all stuck over there. They don't know, they forgot. And the church has distorted the Bible. So they've taken this out of the Bible. So you don't know what Jesus is really saying. Okay. Okay. So on to the next one. Verily, this is Jesus again. Verily I say unto you, none will be saved unless they believe in my cross. But those who have believed in my cross, theirs is the kingdom of God. So again, he's just saying, remember his journey, know the path, and you will ascend. All right. He says again, come to hate hypocrisy and the evil, for it is the thought that gives birth to hypocrisy, but hypocrisy is far from truth. Okay. So it's really like, know the tenets of hypocrisy. And when you know others are doing it, and you'll be able to reflect and say, oh, I'm not going to do I'm not going to be a part of that. Right. No, it's a tenet of evil. Like I said, here it's the measure. Hypocrisy accuses you of what they are doing, or you're accusing others of what you are doing, right? It's a mirror effect. So, stop, reflect, know this is how those in darkness operate. All right. So when you see people who are being, hypocrites, then know that they're operating in darkness, right? And just know that that's a measure that you can avoid, right? Just by, you can do what Jesus did, just turn the other cheek, stand out there and be persecuted and just allow it to happen and move on. Okay. For as to the word, its first part is faith, the second love, the third The third works from these come from life. And when he had worked, he was saved because he had prepared it for food and again left some to sow. This is awesome. So also you can you can yourselves receive the kingdom of heaven. Unless you receive this through knowledge, you will not be able to find it. Okay, so Jesus is saying, you may not understand when you first receive the knowledge at first. Over time, it will grow roots like a seed and prepare you for the hero's journey as it grows roots in your thoughts. If you do not receive the knowledge, then you will not have the tools to complete the hero's journey. So it is very important that you receive the message. And like I said, I think the creator is working really hard with movies and books and stories to try to show you that you're in this hero's journey. But the thing is like Jesus is telling you in the secret book of James, the Apocryphon of James, he's telling you that here's the knowledge so you can make the hero's journey, so you can ascend. Otherwise, you're stuck in this incarnation trap. That's what's going on this planet. People are stuck in this incarnation trap over and over and over again, re-experiencing suffering because they haven't been able to receive the knowledge. It says, unless you receive this through knowledge, you'll not be able to find it. So, you got to be told the journey. You got to know about the journey that you're going to go through. Therefore, I say to you, be sober and do not be deceived. So wake your ass up. Wake up so that you'll not be deceived by the evildoers in the hero's journey. So if you know the truth, you know what's going on. You're not going to be tempted by the evildoers. Hey, come in here, come over here. Let's do drugs. What, I don't know, man. I'm not trying to judge or anything like that, but whatever evil does and is tempting you to do, you'll not be tempted, right? Because you'll know that everything that's happening in the darkness is a part of the dark to light. And if you're ready to ascend, then you're like, oh, I don't want the darkness anymore, right? I want to wake. I want to go. I want to be woke, right? So I want to wake up. I want to ascend, to the next stage, to the fourth density, to the higher density. I want to wake up. Okay. So the next one, and many times have I said you all together, and also to you alone have I said, be saved. And I command you to follow me, and I have taught you what to say before the archons. So be saved means to follow me, right? Not I did all the hard work, so all your sins are forgiven. No. He's saying be saved, follow me by witnessing my journey and learning the path. So the archons, so he mentions the archons, and I just Googled archons, right? And what I got are, what I understand archons to be are these beings that manage the incarnation cycle. When you do not ascend and go through the reincarnation process that includes healing, reflection, and preparation. So basically, I guess these archons are just managing this incarnation trap. So, if you don't know, if you don't do your work, if you don't follow Jesus, then you're going to be managed by the archons, and you're just going to be reincarnating over and over and over again in this third density of suffering, and you're going to be re-experiencing, suffering, traumas, and everything else over and over. So the Father has no need of me, for a father does not need a son, but it is the Son who needs the Father. Though I go to him, for the Father is a son, has no need of you. So basically, everyone is a son. We're all the children of God, Source. Everyone needs a father, so we need Source, and you're going to return back to the Father. So that's what he's saying here. Hearken to the word, Jesus. Understand the knowledge, love life, and no one will persecute you, nor will anyone oppress you other than you yourselves. Oh my gosh. All right. So when you understand the knowledge of the hero's journey and all the tenets, measures, and examples, then their evil ways will have little impact on you. You know, the only time they'll have impact is if you accept their persecution. Okay. It's like knowing all the scenes in a movie. I think I said this before. It's like knowing all the scenes in a movie before watching it. You know the scary parts, and so they aren't scary anymore unless you want to be scared. You know, that's what he's saying. You know, do you want to be scared? Okay, well, you can be scared if you want to, but if you have the knowledge, you know, and this permeates your consciousness, you know that you're going to go through this stuff, and you know, just love life anyway. So somebody might come out of the weeds and persecute you, and then you go, okay, and then you go back to loving life, loving your family, reflecting on the knowledge, reflect on the scriptures, reflect on the stories to build your faith up again. Because sometimes when you come into conflict with people that persecute you, it hurts you a little bit, and so you need something to build your faith up. Know that you're where you're going back, you're going to ascend, you're going back to the creator. You're not here forever. This is just a day in your life. You know, your whole lifetime is just a day in the actual life of your existence, right? But you'll be able, no one will be able to persecute you or oppress you. And you know, it's only what you accept, and you'll find that. So it's pretty powerful. Imagine if you were taught this originally in the scriptures. All right. Verily I say unto you, had I been sent to those who would listen to me, and had I spoken with them, I would never have come down to earth. So he's saying, I'm coming to my people, right? Jesus's message was for those who didn't know the path. There are others that came before him, right? He came for the people that didn't know the path, right? There were other wanderers who descended to show the path. So I think Siddhartha Gautama Buddha was one. And you could take Siddhartha's life and overlay it with the hero's journey, and you'll find that he was on a hero's journey too. So there were many people that needed to know the path through the hero's journey. So he was called to show us, the people that would listen, his brothers and sisters, come to me, let me show you the way. Come on, follow me. The ones that were listening, that's who he came for. He didn't come for the negative entities, the service to self ones that are going through. He came for the service to others, the positive beings who are going through this ascension, and not pay attention to all the other stuff that's going on here. Don't pay attention to the materialism and all that stuff. Let all that go. Just know that, you're going to go through this hero's journey. And that's what I'm here to show you. Okay. That's why he came down here. All right. Jesus says, invoke the Father, implore God often, and he will give to you. So pray to God, ask for his help. He'll guide you and assist you when asked. And it's all about having faith. And you can literally talk to everybody that's going through anything. And you'll find that in every situation where they have anxiety and depression and other things, it's because they lack faith. Okay. They've lost their faith. They're stuck in the dark side of their journey. And they've lost faith. So, but if you pray to God and you look for his help, who has helped you in the past, you'll see God's actions in the past. This will help you build faith. You can look at the scriptures, whatever, to help you build faith. Sometimes watching uplifting movies. Honestly, I only listen to Christian music anymore, uplifting music. And Christianity has its problems, but I look, no matter what, I look for uplifting music. I look for stories that help me build faith. I do not watch horror movies, scary movies. I don't really watch any of that stuff anymore. Watched it, experienced it all. I only listen to things that uplift me, right? Because that is all the dark side of stuff, and it's meaning to keep you trapped. And I found out that, that's what works for me. All right. Take it as you need. Right. But pray often, meditate. I pray every time I get up. I pray throughout the day. I pray when I go to bed. I'm thankful for everything. So I'm constantly expressing gratitude for things that I have. and have experienced in my life. And yeah, that's what, so he's just saying, invoke the Father, implore God often, and he will give to you. So really important, key, essential thing to remember. He says, keep his will that you may be saved, accept reproof from me and save yourselves. Okay. Accept reproof from me and save yourself. This is Jesus. This is what he said. Accept reproof from me and save yourselves. You're on the hero's journey. You're going through the journey. You have to save yourself. Jesus didn't come to save you. He came, he showed you the way, right? And what he's saying is get off your knees, hands and knees. I am your brother. I'm like your older brother. I am going through this first with the family, and you can see what you need to do to get through it. So pretty powerful. It changes the whole concept of Christianity. So another one, these are the things that I shall tell you so far. Now, however, I shall ascend to the place from where I came. But you, when I was eager to go before, have cast me out, and instead of accompanying me, you have pursued me. Okay. Again, this is from the Nag Hammadi Scriptures, Secret Book of James. He said, it's time for me to ascend. I have to go now. You had an opportunity to come with me, but instead of completing God's will, the hero's journey, instead of listening to me, you have chosen to worship me, and therefore cannot ascend with me. That's what he's saying at this point. I showed you the way. You're down here worshiping me, and that's not why I'm here. Okay, let's read it again. These are the things that I shall tell you so far. Now, however, I shall ascend to the place where I came, but you, when I was eager to go before, have cast me out, and instead of accompanying me, you have pursued me. Yeah. So again, he's saying, you have chosen to worship me, and therefore cannot ascend with me. This is what he's saying to James at the time, I believe. It's important that we hear the message and that we know the journey that we're on, and that we're following in his footsteps, and we're going through the persecution and oppression, and we're going to experience hypocrisy and all that. And it's important to reflect on uplifting stories that help us build faith. It's important to, invoke, pray, meditate all the time. Be grateful for everything you have, and then you're on the ascension path, right? And and I think the law of one, they say you need to be 51% service to others to ascend, right? On the positive polarity. And so what does that mean? Well, I think it's all your thoughts and actions throughout the day must be at least 51% positive. Okay. And so how do you do that? You build your faith, building faith in the Creator, having faith with the Creator, and forgiving others, forgiving yourself. And anytime you have a judgmental thought or anything like that, you reflect on it, forgive yourself, forgive others. Whenever you have a thought from the past that comes and haunts you, or you have somebody that comes to mind that, they persecuted me, they're a bad person. No, forgive them, forgive yourself. It's 51% of that doing all the time, right? I just try it all. I just do it every time I remember. Every time I remember, I do my actions, right? All right. So the differences between the Nag Hammadi Scriptures and the Bible. So in the Nag Hammadi Scriptures, Jesus is your equal. You're full from eating the fruit of knowledge given by Jesus' sacrifices for going through the hero's journey himself and accepting God's will and showing us the way. So that's what we get from the Apocryphon of James. Jesus is your equal. Jesus is the sacrifice. He made the sacrifice to show you the way. He was the first one that jumped out of the airplane, right? He's your older sibling, the firstborn born, the firstborn in your family. He's showing you the way, right? To be saved, you must have the knowledge of God's will, the hero's journey. Then remember your way through the hero's journey. You know, as the seeds are permeating your consciousness, the seeds are set. You must complete the journey. You are to save yourself. Scripture is the handbook. So through Scripture in the Gospels, they are meant as examples that you can reflect on to restore your faith throughout your journey. The Holy Bible in the Christian interpretation is Jesus is Lord, God is Jesus, Jesus is God, worship Jesus. To be saved, Jesus was crucified and exonerated your sins. By accepting Jesus as your Savior, you're therefore saved. This is a false interpretation. This is a wrong interpretation. This is an interpretation that was given by the Catholic Church, okay? And we can't trust the Catholic Church for all those things I've already said. They did horrible things. They continue to be the Antichrist. So Martin Luther accused the Pope and the church of being the Antichrist. And if you read the book of Revelation, it talks about the Antichrist. It means to make itself look like the God or the creator when it is not. And that's what the church is doing. And so in doing that, they are giving you a false interpretation. They're also changing it. So you're stuck in this incarnation trap. Okay. And so the real way is by knowing that Jesus is your equal. He was your older sibling. He jumped out of the plane first, and he provided you with the fruit of knowledge, the fruit from the tree of knowledge. Yeah, so he made the sacrifice by being the older sibling, but to be saved, you must save yourself. You must go through the journey. You must know it's happening. You must forgive yourself and others, you know, that's how you make it. Okay, ascension and acoustic in Gnostic terms. On your return to God, you come to realize God was with you throughout your entire journey. This hero's journey was God's will mentioned in the Bible. After passing through death and rebirth, you'll be able to look back and see all the supernatural events that occurred and the people who were sent to you along the way to help you. You'll know that that was actually source, God, the creator. They came at moments in time that were like, you know, critical. And so you'll be able to look at, you'll even be able to look back and know that the trauma you went through was there to help. Once you learn from the trauma, once you learn to forgive that, you'll learn that that helped you to penetrate the veil that exists between you, the known world, and the unknown world, right? Or your conscious and your subconscious, right? You'll be able to look back and you'll be able to see that those events you went through were necessary in order to get you to the other side. Okay. The hero's journey is the template of movies throughout Hollywood. There is a reason for this. God continually reminds us that we are in the hero's journey. God's will permeates everything. It is built into the fabric of our existence. On a minor level, every day you experience death and rebirth as you go to bed, and then you wake in the morning. The Creator sends us mentors and helpers along the way, and we are consistently reminded of the path. They are built into the fabric. Once you complete the path, then we ascend as Jesus did. Movies are God's will, attempting to fill in the gap for those who do not know Jesus' story and the hero's journey. It's this work. Source is working very hard to show us the way. Reading the biblical text, Nag Hammadi, and knowing the hero's journey amplifies our successful ascension. You know, and other things too. Reading the Law of One, I love the Law of One. Jesus asked people to meditate on scripture so that they can see what they do not understand yet. After reading and knowing his story, then you are more confident and become less concerned with the outside world. Jesus' insights will seed into our consciousness and grow roots over time as we walk the journey. Okay. So Jesus said, I am the way and the life. I am the way and the truth and the life. Remember, we started at the very beginning with this. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you know me, you'll know my Father. You'll know my Father also. Clearly, this is a message about the hero's journey. Jesus is stating that you must know the truth about the way. Once you know the truth, then you will make the journey and return back to the Creator so you can ascend. So third density, gosh, I did a little bit here. I'm not sure. Okay, so yeah, third density. So question 1916, raw in one of the books. The majority of third density beings is as far along at the chosen path before realization of the path is conscious. All right, so one thing I didn't really introduce, the law of one. Law of one was channeling work that was done by 3 individuals in 1981. This year is the 40th anniversary of their work. They channeled Ra, and Ra is a being, a social memory complex, as they call themselves, and it's an extraterrestrial, if you want to call it that. I would just say a cosmic source, another part of the source of the Creator, and they channeled this energy. And again, this was what that was done throughout time. In your dreams, you can connect with God, so this is good work. Anyways, you can read the law of one on your own. Many of you know it, and at this point, I'm just going to go over it. So, all right. So question 1916 again, the majority of third density beings is as far along the chosen path before realization of that path is conscious. At some point, we realize that we are conscious of the hero's journey that we are on. Once conscious, we realize we have always been on the journey. So question 1915 says, this is Ra. This is Ra's response. So wherever it says Ra, that's Ra's response. The new or initial third density entity, that's us. So we're in third density. Anybody living on this planet is really in third density right now. Has an innocent, shall we say, bias or distortion towards viewing those in the family, the society, as you would call, perhaps country, as self. For without wisdom, the compassion and desire to aid other selves is not extremely well informed. I don't remember why I put these in here, but maybe we'll get something out of it. So 66.6 question. That's an interesting number, right? You may see the wanderer as the infant attempting verbalize the sound complexes of your peoples. The memory of the ability to communicate is within the infant's undeveloped mind complex, but the ability to practice or manifest this, called speech, is not immediately forthcoming due to the limitations of the mind-body complex as chosen of its experience. And man, this is so dense, and I actually forgot to put notes in here. So there are many wanderers on this planet, and they came from other planets of higher density to help the third density people of this planet to ascend. And the problem is when they get here, they lose their way too. They go through the veil of forgetting. And so the truth is there. The truth is, they know the truth. They know where they come from, but it's behind this veil. But eventually, over time, it will permeate a little bit, and what they're doing, Ra is saying here, is they're comparing it to that of an infant. It's, you know, it knows how to speak when it's born, but it forgot how to use its mouth. And so, and it takes time to for the child to manifest the connection between its underdeveloped mind and to be able to speak. Okay, and it's not immediately forthcoming, and it takes time to do that. Okay, and they're saying that the wanderers that came to this planet, like Jesus was a wanderer, are they're attempting, they're doing their best to help people remember. Okay, and when they're existing on Earth, it's difficult because the third density is so dense, it's so thick, and they get lost, right? And it takes time for them to be able to remember what their purpose was to come here, and eventually, you know, they're able to speak and show people the way, you know, and provide them information to get them, you know, back on track. Okay, so the veil exists between the subconscious and the conscious, and I say that the veil is karma. Okay, but the veil is talked about in the law of one. Okay, and they say that the veil was created between the subconscious mind and the conscious mind for many reasons. There was many reasons why it was created, but mainly to help increase our ascension, because what happened is when everybody was born into this third density, there was so much going on, and they remembered everything that had ever happened to them, everything that they had ever done, and it was literally distracting. And so they couldn't, and our lifetimes were originally 900 years, and they were literally living their entire life just lost. And so because they were so confused with everything. So what happened was this veil was erected between the subconscious mind and the conscious mind, and that is what they say is it's semi-permeable. So in some people, it's really permanent. It's so thick they can't get through it, and over time, many people are able to permeate the veil, so they start to remember. And again, if you go back to what it says about the wanderers, it says that eventually they're, you know, it's like being a child, and eventually their ability to remember and communicate, you know, and reflect on who they were as a past and bring that out into the consciousness as they age, they're able to do that, right? They're able to bring out the truth. So the veil is semi-permeable, and many people, the veil is so thick. So when you know, wanderers and others start to permeate the veil and they start to speak, you can tell whose veil is really thick, right? Because they will start to persecute you and oppress you. And so what you must do is just turn your cheek and keep on going and doing your work, and you know, the best that you can, right? All right, so karma, what I say what karma does is it's a thickening of the veil, the thickening or thinning of the veil. And what happens as events occur in your lifetime, and depending on the harm you inflict on others, the veil thickens through the violations of the commandments, which are really just karmic things. They're, you know, the commandments are like, hey, if you do these things, what you're going to do is you're going to increase your karma. You're going to thicken the veil. All right. And so catalysts are what the law of one they talk about. They call them opportunities, and catalysts are these traumatic events that happen in our life, right? Oh, you know, in my case, when I was in high school, my brother died in a car accident, right? And and also, you know, my father was really abusive. I lived, you know, most of my life in a mentally, emotionally, and abusive situation. And you know, what they are these catalysts that offer an opportunity to reduce the thickness of the veil, Um, and so, and that's because in previous lifetimes, you know, you have done things to harm other people. So what you do is you incarnate in this lifetime with hopefully enough catalysts that help you to thin the veil so you can remember the hero's journey, because the veil is semi-permeable, right? And so you can get back on track again, right? Um, and what happens is the catalysts, they keep coming back, they keep coming until you learn the lesson, right? Until you see the catalyst as the opportunity that it is. So, you know, for example, say you're a type of person that always chooses to be with abusive partners, right? And they manipulate, control, and dominate you in all these different ways. And you have a long, you know, relationship for a few years, and you get tired of it. You get rid of that person, and then you end up in a relationship with another one just like them, and you break up with them, and then you end up in another relationship just like them, and you break up with them. It just keeps going and going and going and going, right? And that's what happens, is because you're on the hero's journey and you're trying to get from dark to light. These catalysts keep continuing. They're opportunities. These are opportunities to help you reduce the veil, right? And the veil is semi-permeable. And the truth about the hero's journey has been seated in your consciousness, and the only way that you can remember it is if you thin the veil enough, and then you hear the message enough, and then it starts permeating from your subconscious, and then you're like, aha, oh yeah, I got to forgive and let go, right? So and then you gotta, you know, Jesus says you gotta have faith, you gotta meditate, you gotta talk to God, the creator, and really what you're doing is reestablishing the bond with the source energy. That's what you're doing with faith. And that's what you're doing by communicating to the creator or source or God, whatever you want to call it. When you're constantly communicating, and then you've seen the faith executed, that what you're doing is reestablishing your bond with the source. And what you eventually realize is that you have a creative power. You are very powerful yourself. And so you are, in fact, creating situations that help, that are these opportunities, situations, these catalysts. You are creating these catalysts to help you permeate. You were always doing this. You were the one that was doing this, all this stuff that happened to you in the past, right? But right now, and it's not necessary to get that far deep into it, but it's just a matter of what you're doing is you're reestablishing your bond with the source energy, and you're forgiving others. And these are the keys to healing from the catalysts, these opportunities that you were given to pierce the veil, right? Jesus said the most important of the commandments is to forgive your enemies and yourself. Well, really, I put this in here, yourself, but forgive your enemies, love your neighbors as you want to be loved, and love God with all your heart. This is, he said, was the most important commandment of all of them, right? That's because all these other commandments here are karmic events that are causing you to get a thicker veil. So the you know, people that have, you know, done horrific things in their past, you know, and then were able to forgive themselves for doing that, that was a huge opportunity. It doesn't matter how you look at it. Things were done to you or you did bad things. Either or, they are opportunities for you to pierce the veil, okay, and get to this true, the true knowledge, That's what you're trying to get to, right? They're all catalysts. They're opportunities that will thin the veil, okay? And Jesus says the most important of the commandments is to forgive your enemies, love your neighbors as you want to be loved, and love God with all your heart. That is how you are able to get through the healing, and that's how you're able to pierce the veil. Okay, God forgives all, you forgive all. It's what happens. Okay, ascension. I don't know. I didn't complete this. And I was honestly, I was getting these dreams every night that was like, I have to do this presentation. And it doesn't matter if one person or two people watch it. I have to do the presentation. It has to be done. And so I was getting these dreams over and over. I was like, okay, I'm going to do the video tomorrow. Okay. So here I am. I'm doing the video. So this I pulled out of Ra, the law of one. Ra says the fourth density is, as we have said, as regularized in its approach as the striking on of a clock upon the hour. Again, Ra's talking about we're going to go through this ascension to the fourth density. We're in the third density right now. And if you read the law of one, we're in the ascension process. The planet itself is going through an ascension. And we're going into the fourth density. In the fourth density, amazingly, check this out. The fourth density is the unity, is called unity, and which is also love. All right. It's the love density, but it's the unity with the creator. So so the third density is separation from the creator. Fourth density is where you become one, you unify, you remember everything about the creator, you unify with the creator. Okay, that's what happens. Okay, fourth density, you become love. And it says the questioner was asking, when are we going to go through this, right? When is this going to happen? And Ra says the fourth density is, as we have said, as regularized in its approach as the striking of a clock upon the hour. The space-time of your solar system has enabled this planetary sphere, Earth, to spiral into space-time of a different vibrational configuration. So the thing is the planet has changed dramatically in the last 100 years, in the last 20 years, in the last 10 years. You can look back and see how we have changed dramatically, even in the last 5 years. Okay. And what is happening is every moment of every day, we are being drawn to this event. Okay. And the ones that we're all trying to ascend, many people are lost, and you can't fix it for them. You can't fix other people. I'm only doing this as an offering, and people will be guided to see it that need to see it, right? But you can't sit down and awaken people with the one-on-one conversation. It's just like it said, it's just like a striking upon the clock on the hour. It's happening at an individual level, happening at a spiritual level. It's happening at a planetary level, but it's happening, on this planet with everybody individually. So Ross says again, in the understanding which we have of the universe or creation as one infinite being, its heart beating as alive in its own intelligent energy is merely one beat of the heart of this intelligence from creation to creation. And it's really like we're all one. The universe is one infinite being. We're all fractals of this one infinite being, and it's completely alive. So the planet is a part of it. The universe is a part of this one infinite being, and it has its own intelligence, and so it's in every part of our creation. So but yeah, I mean, more law of one stuff would be nice. I will do some more. There's many parts I wanted to pull out, but this is what I got for now. Here's some resources for you that you can go and look at some of this stuff yourself if you are inclined. I hope this has brought some understanding to all of you who are watching or listening. And if I get some feedback, maybe I'll do another one. And, you know, depending on the response, you know, maybe ask, I'll look at the questions, and if people want specific information, I'll do another one based on the feedback that I get. If I get comments that are persecuting or oppressive or hypocritical, I'm going to take that as I'll just turn a chink to those and let them lay. They will make no sense to me. I am not in that vibration of the dark energy anymore. I believe I'm moving into the light, and I can forgive those who do attempt to persecute me. But I'm really speaking to those who are going through this going through this ascension process, who are looking for insights on how to ascend. I mean, I've talked about this with many people. It's like, you know, when you were born into this lifetime, you knew that maybe this resonates with you, but a part of you was like, you know, I'm not here. This is, you know, this is not my permanent home. I know that this is not my permanent home, and I'm not here to stay. I know things are happening that are not a part of my reality. What is occurring here is not really my reality. It's just, you know, school, however you want to explain it. But I have a purpose, and that's to go through this journey, you know, and get out clean. And those individuals, well, not clean, but, you know, get out, just ascend, just get through it. But, you know, you'll probably resonate with something that happened to you earlier in life. Like you know that this is not true for you, and that the reality is not true for you, and you know there's something more to it, and you're looking for this insight. And I really believe that's because you've gotten to the place in your consciousness where you know that you have to look for the insights. What you're being told is not the truth on the mainstream, right? All that main stuff that's the fake reality, trying to control, manipulate, and dominate you, and try to keep you in the dark, so you're stuck in this incarnation cycle. But you're not doing that. You know that you are meant to get beyond this, right? And so those are the people that I'm speaking to here. You know that you're moving on beyond this physical reality, this physical world. There's much more to it than what has been told to society. So I pray that this resonates with the right people, that it attracts the right people. And yeah, so that's it. Thank you again. Now, Miho says it's time to go, and my dog. And so I'm going to go now. And thank you again for listening. Now, if I know how to stop recording, that would be awesome. I'm still learning this technology. So anyways, thank you again for listening. Many blessings to you. May this information permeate your consciousness and on to others. All right. Thank you. Many blessings.